I give you my top 6 go-get players before week 3.
Cracks off.
And if you don't grab them now, you probably won't be able to get them walking into week 4. Javonte Williams, you have just been Smitty approved. AJ Brown, Smitty approved. Ridley, approved. Jefferson approved. DK approved. Josh Allen approved. Let's break down every one of them. The Fantasy Football Show
begins now.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.
Top 5 running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show.
Smitty. Take a lap. Let's kick it off with AJ Brown, a guy that I do have some concern about. Like, let's be honest. You don't know how he's fitting in with Julio. You don't know what the dynamic is. They struggled in week 1. They ran the ball well in week 2. Everybody thought, oh, the target shares will just transfer over. All the abandoned targets from Jonnu and Corey Davis, they just slide right into Julio, and the rest go over to AJ Brown. Look, I admit, I'm worried a little bit about what's going on and where everybody fits in. Offensive coordinator, Tannehill looking bad. It's not the same exact offense and same team coming out of 2020. But that doesn't mean that AJ Brown isn't quietly sleeping, nestled in his bed right now, about to break out from his current value. Right now, if you want to go trade for AJ Brown, you don't have to pay the price tag you paid in August. He costs you easily a mid-third, maybe later in terms of trade market value right now. That means if you own him, you're holding him because no one's giving you the respect he deserves. No one's going to give you what you need to get if you're going to trade him away. So current owners hold him. If you don't own him, enter buying opportunity number 1, AJ Brown. Go get him before week 3 pops off. AJ Brown is capable of being the number 1 overall wide receiver come week 17's end. We look at the stats. There he is, number 1 overall. I don't care what's happened already. I don't care who's got an early lead. AJ Brown is capable of finishing as the number 1 wide receiver at week 17's end. I don't care what anybody says. Because of all the uncertainty, though, and because of how stacked the top 8 wide receivers are in fantasy football, it's very easy to move them to the bottom of that top tier because it doesn't say anything horrible about a player when you're like, okay, he's in the same group as Hill and Adams, but we're going to move him to the bottom of that really elite tier until we know what is what. Julio won't stay healthy all year. I firmly believe that. I think AJ Brown's role becomes very prominent, in the coming weeks. Maybe it takes a week or 2. I don't know, but I'm not taking the risk if I can buy him now and weather through potentially another week or 2 of this. But I believe AJ Brown might explode in week 3. And then good luck buying him low. Even if he does go nuts in week 3 and then does okay in week 4, people are going to get a taste of what AJ Brown's capable of. And you won't be able to buy him low going forward. Act now before week 3. Everything I said about AJ Brown can be applied to Calvin Ridley. And ironically, it's tied to Julio again. Julio's kind of attached to both of these guys. And Calvin Ridley, people are worried about maybe he can't survive alone. Maybe Kyle Pitts isn't the real deal. Maybe Calvin Ridley can't be a number 1 wide receiver, let alone a top 1 to 5 wide receiver. But that is not the way to look at this situation, people. And Calvin Ridley's game log isn't that bad. 8 targets in week 1, 10 targets in week 2, 5 receptions and 7 receptions, 51 yards and 63 yards. He grabbed the 1 TD in week 2 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think the New York Giants will be just what the doctor ordered for the Falcons and for Ridley and for Kyle Pitts. And I think in week 3, they all explode and you can never get Calvin Ridley at this potential wide receiver, low-end wide receiver 1 value. But some people treat him like a wide receiver 2, a high-end wide receiver 2, especially if you're trading across position. You can maybe trade a Damian Harris right now. Maybe you give up something else with it, but you can get Calvin Ridley using a Damian Harris. Don't think for a second that Calvin Ridley can't be the number 1 wide receiver go forward. Right now, don't bank on it. You don't have to. if you own him, you have to hold him. No one's giving you fair market value for Calvin Ridley right now, nor do I want to trade him at all. If I own him, I'm excited about him. 1 TD through 2 weeks, he's fine. AJ Brown and Calvin Ridley feel very much the same to me. And the guy I'm going to talk about next, DK Metcalf.
Same thing.
Act now, buy low. Calvin Ridley won't be cheaper walking out of week 3. I can feel it in my gut. And since we mentioned him already, DK Metcalf, let's talk about DK. Everything I said about AJ Brown, everything I said about Calvin Ridley, we can move it on over to DK Metcalf because he's in the same boat. Same talent level, same potential, top 1 to 5 wide receiver potential. I think because DK Metcalf had a very rocky finish to 2020 and having a slow start in 2021 is going to make him the most cheap player out of all 3 of these guys, AJ Brown, Calvin Ridley, and DK Metcalf. If you can acquire one cheaper than the others, it would be DK Metcalf if I had to guess. Especially with Lockett going off. It's one thing when AJ Brown and Julio are kind of like in a shaky environment altogether. Calvin Ridley, same thing. Pitts isn't doing good. Calvin's not doing good to everybody's standards, of course. It's different when Lockett's having major success and you think, well, is DK broken? Were we wrong about DK Metcalf? It's a very different effect when someone's popping off on the squad next to the player that's not doing what you think they're capable of doing. Like I mentioned with Calvin Ridley and AJ Brown, you can get rid of a Damian Harris right now for a DK Metcalf. I know many won't agree with me here, but I'd trade Lockett straight up for DK if I had to, but you can probably get more. And I'm okay if anybody says no. I'm trusting Lockett after 2 weeks. We've seen Lockett do this before where he goes crazy, then he vanishes for a while. I'm not saying Lockett will vanish, but I don't believe that Lockett go forward. You can't take last week's points with you in a trade. I don't think going forward that DK is going to get outscored by Lockett. I just don't. I'll reassess when we hit week 5 and I'm wrong through 5 weeks, then we'll take a look at it. But right now I'm trading. I'm banking on DK Metcalf over other players that are ranked way below DK on my rankings going forward. These 3 guys can win you a league: AJ Brown, Calvin Ridley, and DK Metcalf. And in leagues where you've got McCaffrey down, you've got weird things going on with your roster, I've tried to build teams where I'm acquiring all 3 of these guys and depleting my running backs and going with committees, going with Javonte Williams and riding that out until it finally explodes and gives me what I'm hoping for. I'm willing to take the risk in situations where, hope is almost lost anyway. You lose a guy like Christian McCaffrey, you lose J.K. Dobbins, you lost ETN, whatever the case may be. If you have a team where you need to experiment to try and win anyway, why not build around wide receivers like AJ Brown, Ridley, and DK Metcalf? Roll Sermon and Javonte Williams out with Pat Mahomes. I'm doing it in one league, in an expert league. I lost J.K. Dobbins at the beginning of the year, and I've had to get creative to get back into a competitive state. Let me show you my team. Okay, so out of the draft, I came away with Mahomes. It's a 6 point per TD league. Najee, J.K. Dobbins, Mike Davis as my running back 3, Mike Evans, Callaway, and MT. It's a very competitive league, and it's 6 points per TD pass. So one of those teams where I didn't love it, but I didn't mind it. JK was a wild card, and then JK gets hurt. Now my team looks depleted. It already was something that was on the struggle bus in my mind coming out of the draft a little bit, but losing JK was a just stab to the heart. So I had to make some moves. So the first move I made was I traded Najee Harris and Mike Evans, and I got back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I got back DK Metcalf, and I got back Antonio Brown. So AB down at the bottom. So I got rid of Najee and Mike Evans, and I got DK, Clyde, and AB. Getting that third piece was really key for me because it gave me more trade flexibility. If I was to do a 2 for 2, it wouldn't have been much movement or ability to make trades and get and build up another spot. The whole point was to try and gain an extra piece to play with, an extra card, so to speak, at the table. I have Chuba Hubbard sitting on the bench, so I'm going to write Chuba here. Chuba Hubbard, who was nothing, a free player at the end of the draft, one of my favorite stash players all year. So I trade Chuba Hubbard and I trade AB, and I get AJ Brown to place in my roster. I've got Sermon on the bench, so Sermon now comes into my lineup. Now I've got Clyde, Mike Davis, and Sermon as my running backs. Again, weak, I know that, but considering I've got DK Metcalf and AJ Brown with Patrick Mahomes in a 6-point per TD league, I feel a lot more comfortable with the team. It's not one of my best teams ever. I'm certainly not flexing with this team, but I think I turned it around in a pretty decent way, a competitive way. 6 points per TD pass, potential to bounce back at least. He has breakout upside. He's okay. These two are as good as it gets for a wide receiver combo, and maybe MT bounces back. It's a way to try and recover. It's one of my worst teams. I wanted to show you a struggling team of mine and how I try and trade back into a competitive state. Not every team's gonna have good luck, and I want to give you that example. DK, AJ Brown, Ridley, and like with Metcalf owners watching Lockett pop off, Justin Jefferson owners are like, why is Osborne outscoring Jefferson? Why is Thielen doing good? Why can't Jefferson do good? I venture to say Jefferson and DK are cheaper than AB and Ridley in a trade, but all four of them are fantastic. In fact, I'm trying to accumulate all four of them on one team with a team that has suffered loss, and I lost McCaffrey. So now I'm going to try and trade McCaffrey into Justin Jefferson and into Javonte Williams. On a McCaffrey built team, I'm going to try and take AJ Brown, Calvin Ridley, Justin Jefferson, and DK Metcalf with Javonte Williams and a Sermon type rotation at running back 2, which includes Josh Allen on roster. And I think the team's going to do okay. I'm actually excited about that team quite a bit. There are ways to maneuver around McCaffrey or losing players. You just have to get active, creative, and make a lot of trades and try and gain a piece as you trade, so you have more assets to try and flip. So getting the right 2-for-1s or 3-for-2s is important when you're trying to flip a team from bad to good or change directions entirely. I have very little doubt that Metcalf, Jefferson, Ridley, and Brown will all rebound into top 5 wide receiver potential. Jefferson could still be the number 1 wide receiver go forward. I don't care what he's done or not done in 2 weeks' time. He scored a touchdown like Ridley in week 2, 9 targets, 10 targets. I'm fine with what I'm getting out of JJ to an extent, and I know he's going to get better. Buy low, buy low, buy low. Josh Allen. What do you have to say about Josh Allen other than he proved it last year? He's proven how good he is, and people are overreacting over 2 weeks of football. He connected with Diggs on a touchdown in week 2. Things are fine. Josh Allen could easily be the QB1 or QB2 go forward. Again, you can't use week 1 and week 2. You can't bring those points with you in a trade. Go forward, I like Josh Allen in my top 2 or 3 quarterbacks moving forward, plain and simple. Would I take Kyler over him? Right now, I would, of course. Who wouldn't adjust and adapt and realize that Kyler's balling? And if you've got Kyler, you're not trading down unless you need to make a move. Let me give you an example of when you would maybe trade Kyler for Josh Allen. If your team is struggling and you know you can't win, probably the best move you can make is trade Kyler in for Josh Allen and a wide receiver, if that wide receiver is one of these guys you see in front of you. DK is sitting on that guy's team. You make this trade all day long if it helps you win games. If you see Justin Jefferson, take JJ, AJ Brown, and Allen over Kyler Murray all day long. If you're struggling and you need to trade. Now, if you've got Kyler and your team's in first place and you've got a lit squad, why would you make a move at all? Don't try and fix what isn't broken, but if it's broken, if you know you can't win, you have to get creative and sell high and buy low. It's part of fantasy football. It's good management. You can't get that nostalgia attachment to a player because he's going crazy. If you can't win with Kyler, take advantage of Kyler. Let him help you win. Last but not least, go get Javonte Williams before his owners change their mind and he has that one game that everybody's been waiting for. We knew Javonte may not get full workload until week 4, week 3, week 5, and yet people, even though they knew that, they went in with expectations that this could happen early. We all thought maybe he takes the job in week 1. There was buzz going on around that, and he didn't. Melvin Gordon is hanging on to the job with a kung fu grip. Doesn't mean he's outperforming Javonte. Javonte's looked great when he's in there, but Melvin Gordon isn't going to hold on to the job all year long. He probably won't. No one can guarantee anything, but Javonte Williams was practically a first-round pick, drafted at the very top of round 2. High draft capital, amazing talent quicker, faster than Melvin Gordon is right now. Even though Melvin Gordon's done well with what he's been given, Javonte is going to continuously do better with what he's given. He's a good pass protector that will help him get on the field for all 3 downs. Good hands, electric, nose for the goal line, quick, fast. He's everything Melvin Gordon used to be and more. It's a matter of time. It's not if, it's when. When could be week 3. When could be at any moment, which is why every week that he comes out not looking like the guy you need to take a stab and try and trade for him on the low. Because it may not be week 3, it may not be week 4, or it could be. One of these weeks, you're going to walk out of the week and he's going to look like a top 10 running back moving forward. And if you don't get in now, you won't be able to get in later. Javonte Williams, you have just been Smitty approved. AJ Brown, Smitty approved. Ridley, approved. Jefferson approved. DK approved. Josh Allen approved. Even Stephon Diggs. You may not get him dirt cheap, but go try and get Diggs. We probably should have had Diggs on the list, but I think people are not trading him ultra cheap, but put him on the list. Diggs, Smitty approved. Now go make some trades. Get active. Don't give up. If your team's hurting, go fight. Make a move. Accumulate more talent to then flip that talent. Don't give up. Work hard. Send out offers. Let's go. And I've got a special offer now until Sunday at kickoff. New users at Thrive Fantasy. Link is in the description. Or go to smitty1.com/thrive. New users that sign up with the code HeySmitty, or just click the link in the description, will receive 100% instant first deposit match up to $250 with 4 times rollover requirement. Go play Thrive Fantasy today. Go to the link in the description or go to smitty1.com/thrive and play Thrive Fantasy today.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.
Top 5 running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show.
Smitty!